Hello, welcome everybody. Matt Volm, CEO, co-founder of RevOps Co-op here. Quick plug, RevOps AF 2024. I was mentioning the frigid weather. It's going to be in sunny San Diego at the end of May. You'll be able to hang out with, I'm pretty sure everybody here on the panel, and probably lots of people who are in the audience as well. So go sign up, register for that if you haven't yet. RevOpsAF.com. You can also see it on our website at RevOpsCoop.com. But we are not here to talk about the conference today. We are here to talk about New Year's resolutions, or should I say RevOps resolutions and RevOps predictions for 2024. And I have a whole panel of experts and all-stars that are going to kind of share their predictions and the things that they're going to be focused on. And I think the things that revenue operators as a whole will be focused on for 2024. And so with that, I want to do some very quick introductions of the folks that we have here. Let's see, I'm going to go based on my screen. So I have Jen Egertuer, who is the CEO of Go Nimbly. I have Ryan Milligan, who's the VP of RevOps over at QuotaPath. Jeff Ignacio, the head of growth and go-to-market operations over at Regrow. And then I have Rosalind Sansalena, who is the LinkedIn master and also the CRO, the CEO, the founder of the RevOps Collective, and so a fellow kind of community person and also just a very esteemed kind of RevOps practitioner. So before we move on to the topic, though, as everybody knows, fun, interesting, like personal, non-RevOps, non-professional related fact. Jen, beyond being the CEO of Go Nimbly and doing all the things that you do there, give us one kind of fun, interesting, personal thing about yourself.
Yeah, I also have a game company. So I make board games. It's called Pillbox Games. And you can buy like $25 physical games, which makes marketing and operating a consulting company where, we sell $20,000 plus, and then this game company at $25 a piece. A really interesting experience to go back and forth. I definitely learned from both. I think you're going, actually, we should chat, Matt, when you're thinking about the conference and if anybody's going to sponsor the conference. I think that's something that I've really learned from B2C. They do conferences way better.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. I love that. And then yeah, what's the board game company, Jen? Or maybe
yeah,
throw it in the chat.
it's called Pillbox Games, and I'll put a little promo code in there.
Yeah,
If anybody buys games.
I think I did, and some of them do look very cool. So if
Thank you.
anyone is into board games, definitely take a look at that. All right, so we've got a CEO of one of the leading RevOps consulting firms, and then also a board game master designer / connoisseur. Ryan, what do you got, my friend, besides being kind of leading RevOps and the charge over there at QuotaPath?
Yeah, I've shared my crossword passion before, I think, on one of these. So I'll do a different fun fact, which was that I won a Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo in a raffle when I was 10. So I'm happy to tell that story at some point. It's very funny. It was at a Italian American festival in my hometown, and they called my mom asking if she was my wife, and I was 10. So it was a very, just altogether a very funny set of events that I'm happy to talk about at some point. But yeah, it helped pay for first year of college. So that was my fun fact. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you never got to drive the Jeep, is what I'm hearing.
We did like a kind of a tour of the neighborhood. I sat in my dad's lap kind of situation, but for safety,
Yeah. Yeah. For safety, you won't share what you actually did with the Jeep. No, I understand. I understand. All right, awesome. So Jeff, we'll move on to you, my friend. Beyond all the great things you do at Regrow and the courses you kind of teach your RevOps Co-op and all that other good stuff, what do you got going on the personal non-RevOps, non-professional side?
Yeah, I'm at a 0-day streak for Wordle. So just very proud of not continuing my streak. There was a serious addiction for about 180 days, and proud to claim I'm at 0 days. I know, Kelly, it's absolutely stunning. Okay, fun fact. Let's see. I love traveling to like South America, Latin America. I just recently came back from Costa Rica and love trying my best to speak Spanish. Also a big fan of café con leche. My win percentage so far is 99.9. The one time I did lose, by the way, Aditya, is the very first time I played. I didn't care to read the instructions and I had no clue what I was doing. So that was the one time I actually didn't solve it.
So what I also took away from that was then what, like 179-day winning streak, basically, too? Something
That's
like
too
that?
precise. Let's just round up to 100.
Okay. Nice. That's awesome. All right, Jeff. Well, thank you, my friend, for being here. And then Rosalind.
Yeah. So, yep. So I actually forgot you were going to ask us about fun fact, but I do have one that I can share that I don't know if I've shared before, but I don't know if it's a fun fact, but I'm a big, big Wonder Woman fan. So I collect all kinds of Wonder Woman items, whether they're classic kind of old school Wonder Woman or the newer ones. I probably have maybe close to 100 items. Definitely have to get that on display at some point and share. I think everybody has seen sort of that I'm in this room where I have it on blur, but I have to share that there's a whole production kind of thing going on here behind me with all turntables and reel to reel. That is not me. That's my husband. Wonder Woman's my thing. So
Nice. I love that. That is awesome. Superhero worth following for sure. So, all right.
Matt,
So
can I respond to Jeff's Wordle thing?
yeah,
Okay,
of
so
course
I
you
made
can.
a crossword puzzle Wordly I put it in ampersandy, and the New York Times actually reached out about buying it. And it's funny that you feel addictive because one of their number one like ethos on these is that it should not feel addictive. You should, when you're done with the New York Times games, you should feel like good about it, never icky. And so they try not to make them like it's habit, not addiction. And so they like are very specific on that. And then also they should all, Ryan, knowing you did some of the crosswords, all their games have to feel handcrafted. They have to feel like a person made them, not like a machine or not like, automated. Yeah, it's my goal to get it sold to them. So they're interested if I can get user count up. So everybody on here, please go.
There you go.
I have so many
Every day
questions on
so
the
I can sell it.
multiple, on
Yeah.
the multiple on user. I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. But there you go, Jeff. It's not a just shift the mindset slightly. It's not an addiction, like Jen said.
That's
It's
right. It's a habit.
yeah. There you go. Now you can continue your Wordle streak. Get back up there. All right. So we have a couple of things that are on the agenda for today. So some of the call the different buckets or things that we're going to be talking about are first we're going to get started on some of the metric shifts, some of the KPIs of things that maybe were important and not that they no longer are, but some of the new things that people are going to be focused on for this year. We're also going to be talking a little bit about 2024 goals and incentivizing or compensating against those goals and targets. We'll also be talking about, surprise, surprise, RevOps and AI. And then the last thing on the docket is going to be the future of Coldbound. And again, as we go throughout this, we're going to be taking questions throughout. So we've got the Q&A, we've got the chat. Feel free to throw anything in there that is on your mind. But to get started, metric shifts. And I think the thing that has certainly changed over the last few quarters and as we get started this year is the things that are important to companies, right? The different kind of ways that they're defining and really looking at value. And so a couple of different things that I know we talked about leading up to this. And Jen, I want to get started with you because you obviously work with tons of leading technology companies. And I think you've seen this firsthand from them in terms of a shift to kind of a focus on things like net revenue retention. But maybe you can talk more on that, what's driving it, why, and maybe where they're coming from and where they're ending up as well.
Yeah. Without going too much into the industry's changing and money is hard and all of that, I think the TLDR on it is looking at all of the work that we do for leading SaaS companies. And our big customers are Zendesk, Intercom, Watershed. So we've got meaty clients, Twilio. And so the focus, a year and a half to 2 years ago was a lot on top of funnel, new business, making sure that we are creating great outbound programs, et cetera. And then now we're seeing a lot of our work actually more on identifying expansions and kind of nailing renewals, right? So that NRR topic. How can we make sure that if, you know, we have 100 million in Jan 1, that we have more than 100 million of that same 100 million kind of staying with us, including expanding those customers. So we're seeing projects like looking at usage in your product to identify where you have expansion opportunities, and creating a lot, almost growth marketing tactics within your own user base. We're seeing that a lot more focus on third-party intent. I think we've all been kind of hearing about it, but a lot of companies weren't actually bought in and doing it. So bringing that information in so that we can actually even look at our existing customers. Are they comparing us to a competitor? Might that show a churn risk? How do we identify that and get that to the rep? And then, you know, the shift a little bit, getting a little bit into like kind of the CS space of thinking of CS as how do we get adoption as a primary focus for them? How do we get users using the features that are sticky, and making sure that if there's no usage, like looking at the opposite, no usage, or your champion is no longer at the company, making sure that that's elevated to the right person at the company so that we can have that conversation and make sure to save the account early.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you know, things like net revenue retention, focus on identifying expansion opportunities, making sure that you nail the renewal.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious, like, are those things new in terms of, hey, we weren't measuring these things before, now we are? Or is it a shift in priorities in terms of like, oh, well, before we had the top of funnel stuff at the top of the list, and we were still like doing the math on this other stuff, but
Sure.
didn't really use it. But now that's kind of flipped. Or is it, I don't know, somewhere in the middle?
No, I mean, oh, look, it depends on the maturity of your company. The larger companies are, of course, always measuring all of this, and they've already known their NRR. I think it's definitely a shift in priority. It comes up more in conversation. It's being talked about. The board cares. And so I think it's more of a shift of focus. And then also knowing that, you know, new business is hard. Our cycles are getting longer. Our conversion rates are going down. So how do we make sure? And honestly, I think this is a good shift. This was the whole basis of SaaS, was that you were going to capture someone and maintain and grow them so that their monthly revenue for you at a certain place was going to make you money. And so there is a healthy thing that's going on here, which is how do you make sure that your customers are loving your product so that they continue to keep your, you know, technology in their tech stack and continue to spend more and more money. So I think it's a healthy shift, and it's not necessarily something that we shouldn't have been always doing. It's just that finally people are having the aha moment of, okay, I need to make sure that my customers are happy.
Yeah, it does seem like one of those things, like you mentioned, of the whole idea of SaaS is, like you said, that you get folks and you kind of keep them around. And it seemed
Yeah.
like all of a sudden we were kind of just taking that for granted and never actually like,
Totally.
if we did, we're just like, oh yeah, no, it's SaaS. So like that's obviously like that's just
Yeah.
what happens, right? Like if things were only that easy.
The
Uh,
last point I'll make, because I know there's other smart people here, but I would say the PLG hype is also something that's brought this up. So it's not just the economy and new business being harder, but, you know, PLG had I don't know if you think of the Gartner hype curve, it definitely spiked last year. And everybody was, you know, all in on PLG, something that we've been doing for a long time, by the way. Zendesk has free trials. Twilio had, you know, $5 of like free credit for you. Like PLG is not in and of itself a new theory and a new motion, but you know, you're getting a lot of users, and we need to be able to elevate those and have bigger conversations so that you can sell them enterprise plans, you know, for some folks that come through. Uber famously was a Twilio customer for a long time before they even ever talked to them, and it was like a huge part of their revenue. So I think it's that motion. It's really important for you to figure out how to elevate whatever you want to call them. I call them PQLs for the sake of it, but how do you elevate those conversations? If all you've ever done is interact with them digitally.
yeah. What's on your mind, Rosalind? I think I saw you were gonna add something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, in addition to kind of what Jen was saying about SaaS, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I've been having a lot of conversations just with clients and with companies around this focus of the customer, right? Because we talk about it, we've been talking about it, right? Oh, we need to focus on customer experience and customer value, but we still default to top of funnel, right? In a lot of conversations. And so I think that shift is really important because to Jen's point with SaaS, I mean, when that first prospect signs the dotted line, that is just the beginning, right, of your relationship if it's done right. And I think that driving, adoption, but also, aside from customer happiness, but customer value, right? Really understanding why a customer has decided to do business with you and really investing in them to ensure that they are successful in leveraging your product to do better business for themselves so that they stay with you, they refer other customers to you, right? They really have a long relationship with you because a customer can, potentially, give you a really high CSAT score and say, yeah, I'm really happy because they love their rep or their account manager or their customer success manager, but they're not using the product the way it was intended to. So I think really focusing on customer value, ROI, and really helping them understand that before the renewal cycle happens, right? Way before, like from day one of implementation throughout that relationship, and being able to nurture that is really important. But then also the other thing I see from maybe from a RevOps perspective is that we have the ability to really help our teams be successful in this kind of NRR, NDR, world by really helping them identify white space. And I think this is something we don't necessarily do as much or as well because we're really good at books of business in terms of new, but not as good as really developing our existing customers. What do they purchase? What do they have? Where can we sell more to them, whether it's through our product set or through other divisions or, parts of their company that we can drive better, more opportunity in terms of expansion and growth. So I think there's definitely a shift to that area of focus. And I think RevOps, selfishly, I think RevOps has a huge play there to really enable the team to do better in those areas. And I see Ryan nodding, so I'll get off my soapbox and let him weigh
No,
in.
I think, I love your point. I love your point, Roslyn, on the RevOps side of the house. I think some of the changes we made at QuotaPath last year kind of speak to this. So we actually had like an implementation focused team and an account management team. So we had a CS team that mainly did implementations, and then an account management team that managed the account post implementation. We brought those teams together, and we basically said, hey, you're responsible for the full life cycle from implementation all the way through renewal and ongoing relationship, because of how much of that initial value adoption was not being captured and passed in that handoff for a business of our size. And so all of your ability, we talk a lot about North Star metrics and like what's the big North Star metric for your business. Ours is someone running payouts and paying their team in QuotaPath at least once every 90 days, right? You typically pay your team minimum once a quarter. And so how do I flag accounts who've fallen off that track and then understand why? And to Rosalind's point, deep into dive into what was the initial value they look to uncover and get their usage back up. And with Jen's point too on kind of leading predictors of usage and implementing those. And so bringing those teams together and having that metric has been really helpful for us to say, hey, here are the accounts that are falling off track. How do we bring them back on track? The other big focus for us, and I think, the rise of these reverse ETL players has been massive in this. How do you aggregate that data and push it from your data warehouse back into where your account manager, customer success manager, what have you, is spending the bulk of their time, right? So we calculate customer health score. That customer health score is like compartmentalized between, are they using their full contract? Are they locking in at the rate you would want them to? What are the expansion opportunities? We think about expansion in terms of new commission earning teams who could be using the product, and then pass that data into CRM so that when the team member is trying to do the probability that this customer is going to renew, it's not just a finger in the wind. It's actually, well, they have full penetration, full adoption. They've been using it actively, and here's the new teams I'm going to upsell into. And so I think both the bringing teams together for a smoother customer flow and then reverse ETLing that data into where the person is actually spending her day have been the two biggest unlocks for us as a business, for sure.
So I wrote about this recently. I titled the article like CS customer success is exhausted. Because if you think about it, the last 2 years, or last year particularly, we had quite a bit of layoffs. And so what you've seen is the number of accounts that a CSM manages and the ARR that they're managing, that load has increased, particularly for any business that has like a medium to high touch motion. So if you were to run like a customer wellness or customer survey, employee survey internally, I think you'd find that your CS team is probably a little bit tired with the workload that they've had over 2023. So that inevitably leads us to a couple of investments in the CX org over the next year or two would be my guess. One is automation. So how can they get to a place where they can handle a higher account load? And two, where can they put AI, right? So AI in your knowledge base, in your chat bots. I think you're seeing some of those tools starting to commoditize and open up a couple of frontiers for your CSM. I also want to, take this might be controversial, but the over salesification of customer success, right? And if you think about it, a lot of folks joke that RevOps is sales ops in the skies. A lot of folks joke that CRO is a head of sales in the skies. And when you put CS underneath the CRO, it also puts an emphasis that CS needs to own NRR. When in times past, the customer success org used to manage CSAT, engagement, adoption, right? Making sure that the customer is on a path to unlocking their journey with the product or service that they're using. But when you're forcing the CSM to take on a sales role in addition to their customer wellness role, you might be placing certain, talented folks to apply skills that they haven't been trained on necessarily. And so there is in my mind as a revenue operator, I try to think through what is the role and responsibility of who owns the upsell, who owns the cross-sell, what is our actual motion of unlocking that upsell and expansion? Would it then therefore come from someone who's focused on the customer versus someone who's focused on, unlocking value and selling? So, I think those are big conversations that we need to have because NRR, yes, is a major focus. And that's because, quite frankly, customers aren't buying, right? They're being told freeze spending, freeze hiring, cut headcount. So there's no wonder that the cost of acquisition has spiked through the roof. And so the only place to turn to for growth is to your customer base. And you can do it in a couple of ways. You can give them new product, sell them something new and something new valuable. You can drive price increases on them. That's not going to make your customers very happy, but you can do that. I've heard stories that Salesforce is forcing a 9% renewal increase across the board on their products. I have a couple of other examples that I've seen. Jira's doing the same. So, everyone's raising prices. And sure, you can say it's inflation. I get that. But my guess is that the cynical view is you're trying to drive higher operating margin. So, when we think about CS for next year, let's invest smartly because I think it's one of the functions that has been taxed so heavily in 2023.
Yeah. And I think makes a lot of sense in terms of it's easy to sit back and say, right, like focus and invest in CS. But like you said, Jeff, I think you need to be thoughtful about it and think about what does that all mean, right? Like where should you focus? Where should you invest? Who should be the one to identify expansion opportunities if there are ones? Who should be the one to close those deals? Who should own that, right? And I think that actually kind of gets us into the next topic or bucket here. And Ryan, I'll start with you on this, which is obviously so if changes are happening or things are gonna be different this year than they were last year, you obviously want to make sure that you're incentivizing your teams, whether that's your sales teams, your account management teams, your CS teams, whoever it might be, to be focused on the things that they can own, the things that they can, call it control or at least influence. And so you all at Quota Pathway compensation experts, how do you and kind of your team and your company, I guess, look at incentivizing some of these changes that are happening?
Yeah, so I think what I tend to see and what I tend to talk to customers about is what are the big types of actions within a customer relationship that they want to see changes in that relationship. And a lot of the themes that I'm seeing are hey, longer term commitments are great for the business. I'm looking for renewals to happen earlier and earlier so that we don't get right to the end and are kind of in contract negotiations. But really, I think the cynical view is, oh, we're trying to protect revenue. But especially with longer term engagements, the true view is you're trying to have more time to uncover actual value for the customer, kind of going back to Rosalind's point. It's like, hey, if I only have a year-long contract and I'm spending a couple months in implementation, by the time renewal, and we know that most people are making a decision to renew a software 6 months into a 12-month contract, right? Like they're not getting back. They're not getting to the 11th month and usually saying, oh, should I do this or not? You lost them if you've lost them probably pretty early on. And so how do you give yourself longer time to maintain that relationship? And so we're seeing a lot of people focused on accelerating commission rates for things that are valuable to both the individual seller and then the business. You give additional points for commission rate points for multi-year conversions or maintaining multi-year contracts. You give additional points for renewals that are pulling from next quarter into this quarter. But then you also you kind of have that be consistent across the board for all teams, right? So we have a customer we work with who was really looking to drive a higher percentage of their revenue in multi-year commitments. I know, shit, John, I love the
Sorry, that was
no, you're
Zoom.
good. No, it's hilarious.
I don't disagree.
You want customers to be in multi-year engagement with you to be able to unlock value. So then let's have our BDRs be given extra commission on driving ICP demos because ICP customers are good fits and will sign longer term contracts. And then let's get our sales team to get extra commission points on signing multi-year contracts. And then let's get our account management team an extra commission rate for signing those. And so what you have is an org that is all aligned towards driving towards a North Star metric. The reps and the team members are all compensated on that. So they grew from 3% of the revenue to be in multi-year contracts to over 30%. It's just an easy example that I kind of walk through. And so really it's how do you tie what's valuable for both the business and the customer and then incentivize the individual performer so that if she does well, the business does well and everyone's aligned. It's a big thing.
Yeah. And so I guess going back to one of the things we talked about was net revenue retention, net dollar retention. Jeff brought up the point of, just be thoughtful about who should own that, who is able to truly influence, right, or control that. And so Ryan, for example, to your point, you were like, hey, a lot of times you're making renewal decisions not in the month leading up to renewal, it's it's happened 6 months before. And so if those are the things that are happening in actuality, and this question is aimed at, call it the group, I don't have anyone in particular, so whoever wants to chime in, feel free to chime in, then should compensation or incentives be tied to something like net revenue retention for anybody, whoever it is, right? Or is there a better way, a better metric to maybe incentivize or comp people on whoever it is?
So I can jump in. I actually like the net dollar retention or net revenue retention metric for certain roles, right? I think for somebody who owns an existing customer base and their primary focus or priority is to drive expansion within that customer base. So whether it's an account manager or it's an AE, if it's a full cycle or, whatever type of role it is, typically we've seen account managers, right, in SaaS kind of owning that responsibility. So having a net dollar or net revenue retention, I'm used to saying NDR because I've been promoting NDR for the past 4 years, but now people are starting to listen. We had to change the acronym, but I think if you're really just promoting net revenue growth, it's that whoever that person is, I think incentivizing them on that metric makes a lot of sense, right? You have a baseline, you want it to grow X%. As long as you're growing that book of business, you should be compensated, right? In terms of the comp plan and being paid for performance.
Yeah, and there's a natural tension. I mean, Jeff brought up a good point about, hey, I'm my responsibility, my role is to set someone up successfully. I'm a CSM, I'm focused on usage and adoption. Why am I being compensated on the expansion? I'm not a seller, I'm a supporter, right? And that's a natural thing that I hear a lot. And the way that I typically go about that conversation has been, if you are setting that person up as successfully as you think you are, they're at least going to stay around, right? So gross revenue retention at a minimum should be a way to observe if you actually are doing as good a job as you think, helping your customer unlock value. Now, maybe if you take upsells and say, hey, a cross-sell of a certain size or a new product cross-sell or what have you, someone else can come help with. I'm comfortable there, but I do still want the person who who claims they're doing a great job setting the customer up, like the dollar math should prove that for that team personally, to see at the point in which you come to renewal. I can't remember who, I don't know if it was Rosalind or Jen, who said, I think it was Rosalind who said, oh, I might give a great review because I like my CSM, but my dollars don't actually go towards renewing the product, right? And so that's where I do like, even a person who claims I'm not a seller, you're selling the value of what you're doing, and I do like them being very, very compensated in some way towards that.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. So when it comes to comp design, I always like to start with first principles first. So I think Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. But it doesn't also show you that you put the incentive on the wrong skill set or the wrong person or the wrong role. You won't necessarily get the desired result. And so the first principle is going to be, for CSM, what is in their controllable sphere, right? One is implementation, adoption, engagement. Once they've had value realized with rapidity, hopefully that's within their first year, they're likely going to renew. And not only that, you've also identified expansion opportunities all across the way. Now, you may act as an SDR, as a CSM. You may flag it to your account manager. You may flag it to your account executive who still owns the renewal or upsell, or you might actually have the capability and the skill set to take the football down the field a little further, in the fact that you can also handle those commercial conversations. We're going to go ahead and expand the opportunity, and I no longer have to throw the keys back to the account executive. So if that's the case, depending on how you set up your org and the responsibilities, and you've enabled them, then the first principles can align to NRR or NDR is a core metric in addition to a other set of basket weight of metrics. And when I've designed CSM comp plans, I found that a mixed weighting of outcomes is probably best. You can do a 100% levered plan where they're only on some sort of compensation commission metrics, or you can do an MBO, management by objectives, plus some NRR metrics. The typical MBOs would fall in the form of a CSAT score, maybe your NPS scores. Some debate that the NPS is actually owned by product, not necessarily with CX. You can also take a look at their success at completing certain activities like a business review or a value map. Perhaps you're also adding in some qualitative metrics, qualitative data from your customers. And when you put all of that into your compensation plan, you should then tool it into your ICM, your commission management tool. But you want to start with first principles. What are the outcomes that I want to drive? What are the behaviors I want to shape? The comp plan should then reflect that. And that's usually a shared conversation between your leader of CX and your leader and your commercial leader, whether it's a CRO or whatnot.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the only thing I'll add is start with something that makes sense. And with everything, I always say, give yourself permission to change your mind in the future, right? Iterate, see what works, see what doesn't work. If you go in with one set of expectations and you learn hey, that actually doesn't align with where we have ownership or accountability or control, change things, right? You don't need to stick to your guns if it doesn't make sense. And one last question from the audience here before we move on from the incentive topic is, and this is specific to handling things like churn or other impacts, to say maybe some metrics that people could be compensated on due to merger, acquisition, or even just if there's things that impact the metric that are outside of call it business control, right? I don't know, budgets being cut, downsizes, rifts, whatever it might be. How do you all recommend handling that when it comes to compensation and incentives? Is it hey, just make sure you include a clause in your comp plan so that you can always adjust, back things out, make one-time adjustments? Are there other solutions, things that people can do? How should people think about those things that do impact some of those metrics that may be outside of their control?
Yeah, so I can weigh in. I think the non-controllables, there's kind of that, what do we call it? Non-controllable churn, whatever the terminology is that you want to use. But if a company goes out of business, right? If a company gets purchased through M&A, I think that there are clauses from a comp plan perspective that can apply here. I think some of the things that you mentioned, Matt, like loss of budget, or, they've changed their mind. That's kind of, that's not something necessarily that I would say is an exception to the comp structure.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And I think Jeff, pointed out like, hey, have some of those exemptions for non-controllable events is a good kind of practice. And then, Ryan, I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, just I tend to like to do these plans quarterly. It's always up kind of like it gives you an ability to say in the quarter, hey, how many dollars were up for renewal? And if it turns out that a customer of yours, let's say, goes bankrupt, right? That they're not buying any software, let alone yours. You can back that out of both your numerator and your denominator for like up for renewal dollars when you're calculating net revenue retention. Now, I typically have like a lead, like I find leaders of teams that will typically roll in, like they are org wide and that's like factored in, but on an individual contributor perspective, like, a CX app on my team is not responsible for it if a company goes bankrupt or gets rolled up by another company or something like that. So agreed with both Rosalind and Jeff's points there.
Yeah, you'll see examples of this, not just in CX comp plans, you'll also see it in SDR comp plans. So for example, certain companies will say a deal moves into close one, right? But at the end of the day, the SDR almost has no bearing after that to the close one deal. And so you want to try to create your plan as much as possible towards the controllables. You don't want to leave a lot of the comp plan to an element of your go-to-market motion that is not in there, not within their remit.
Yeah. All right, awesome. So we've covered kind of shifts in metrics. We've covered incentivizing, compensating folks based on the shift in kind of KPIs. And so now I want to get into a little bit about kind of revenue operations and AI. I think, one of the things, at least over the last, call it like 6 months, as, kind of AI has been the only thing that people have been wanting to talk about is like we all need to keep in mind AI is a solution, a technology, right? But to me, things always start with like the problems and like, okay, what am I going to use the technology for to solve those problems? And so that's, I think, what I want to ask all of you about today is like, what are the AI use cases? Because, hey, it's cool to be able to go to OpenAI and ask all these questions and get these answers. Like, that's great. But when it comes to revenue operators and artificial intelligence, like what are those use cases? Like how can folks on this call evaluate the opportunity and potential for AI this year to actually be able to help them like solve problems? And like what are those use cases and what are those problems that AI can solve for them? First one's up for grabs. We'll go to Rob.
Okay, I will start. I think I think this is probably one of the most common questions that I hear. Is, how should we be leveraging AI, right? And I think from a marketing and a sales perspective, it's much more obvious, right? We've seen all the content from a marketing perspective. We've seen AI kind of come and play in a lot of sales motions, especially for outbound, personalization and all of that. But I think from a RevOps perspective, I think when I think about leveraging AI, it's really about, and I think I mentioned this to some of you before, but I think it's really about leveraging AI to do the things, kind of those deeper insights and analytics that as a human, we either cannot do or it takes us hours and hours to do, right? All of us have exported a ton of data into a spreadsheet and then sliced and diced and pivoted all different ways, right? But we still, in order to do some of that really deep analysis and cohort analysis and historical and kind of running some of all the different, looking at data, 50 different ways, I think that's where you can really leverage some of the AI and the technology that's out there to be able to bubble up some of those insights so that we can start to, again, for us as RevOps practitioners to really elevate, right? Instead of doing that tactical manual spreadsheet work, we are now looking at those insights and being able to serve that up to our leadership team to make better decisions. And that's where, I think that's where we should be leveraging not just the insights and the analytics, but what is that next best action, right? I've been on my soapbox about this a lot, but it's about what do we do next, right? Tell me what I should be doing next.
Yeah.
So I've been using it quite a bit at my workplace. I use it as in a couple of first principle ways. The first, as a reasoning engine, I think large language models do a fairly good job of being a reasoning engine. It's quite terrible at being a discrete knowledge engine. So if you give it like particular mathematics, it'll give you the wrong number, or it'll spill a bunch of BS to you. It'll tend to deviate or hallucinate is what they call it. Second is I'll use it as the hardest working intern to do a lot of grunt work for me. And it's a trade-off to do a massive amount of work in a very short amount of time, knowing full well that I'll probably have a lower yield rate than if I were to do the work myself in terms of success. So real world example, or third, I'll use it as a co-pilot, right? For very discrete formulas or SQL queries, debugging a formula, it'll do a good job of doing it. Instead of me staring at a bunch of nested if statements, it'll fix it for me right away. So those are the three main use cases. Give you an example. I did it for my account scoring at Regrow. Regrow is a technology-focused outcome mission company for reducing climate emissions within the agricultural supply chain. And so going to like a Zoom Info or any of these database tools and asking them like, hey, what crops did this company source in what region, and what farming practices did they use? And do they have a scope 3 emission goal and a sustainability lead who works there? They're not going to be able to give me that data. So I would have to go into the website, research LinkedIn. I would have to read their sustainability report, surface that data. And so I started writing a bot using Python and the OpenAI API to call into OpenAI and get the data points that I need, and then create a weighted scoring. So that was one method of how I was doing it. A second one, I was writing a huge backend SQL database for calculating NRR off of our HubSpot data, which is Fivetran into a BigQuery instance. And I was writing this huge engine, this query, which is about a couple hundred lines. And quite frankly, I was getting lost in the sauce, so to speak. And then I just asked, I asked OpenAI like, hey, I'm sure this is wrong. Can you fix it? And can you shrink the lines by a factor of 30 to 40%? And sure enough, it did it. And it shrunk the lines out, and it saved me like a couple of hours easily. And it just showed me that AI as a co-pilot can really lead to lean and mean AI, ops teams. In the old days, I would have said 20 and 25 to 1 ratio for ops. I'm starting to think that these tools, as they start to rapidly evolve, could probably get to a place where you're looking at 40 to 50 to 1. And you're starting to have like a ticketing kiosk sidekick in the form of, you know, a super powered Clippy in the form of a LLM.
Nice. There you go. I love that analogy. All right, super. So there's your AI use case, a super powered Clippy, as Jeff said, for everyone who remembers that. But yeah, Ryan and Jen, I'm curious on either like use cases or things outside of what Jeff and Rosalind had mentioned already.
I kind of want to plus one what Ryan said a little bit earlier, which was around, I mean, AI is working on top of data, right? So we need to have data that we trust. And you started mentioning a little bit, Ryan, about, hey, I need to have reverse ETL and data getting essentially to the right places. And this is something that's been slowly happening, and I feel like it is really quickly growing, which is, I don't know, when I started my career almost 15 years ago in the kind of CRM Salesforce space, every time we went and drew a tech stack, we would draw Salesforce right in the middle. And now we're drawing Snowflake in the middle or some other kind of database. And then we're talking about adding a census or a Fivetran or whatever else you've got to push the data to the right places. And I think that that's a shift that also for a long time, it was only once you had money, like larger companies were moving to Snowflake. It was expensive. And now we're seeing like younger and younger companies make that move earlier and earlier. So I would say, you know, by the end of 2024, if you don't have it on your roadmap and you don't already have this kind of tech stack, it's imperative. It's also the way that we fueled a lot of the solutions that everybody's talking about here. So taking the expansion sort of playbook, our best customers have their database, you know, logic that's essentially like pushing a signal into Salesforce that says, hey, and assigning it and saying, hey, AE, we've seen a spike in usage or a lack of usage or XYZ. Here's your playbook. Go check this out and convert it into an opportunity or don't. But all of that is not logic that we're building inside of Salesforce. We're building it elsewhere and then pushing to CRM.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of, so actually all these use cases, and even, looking at the chat, right? It seems like the thing that a lot of people are doing are things that start with data and be like, hey, here's a big data set. Look at this data. Tell me insights. Hey, here's a big CSV, right? Like, I don't know, make a graph. Like, Jeff was talking about like all these tools doing go-to-market analytics on top of GPT. Uh, Again, I'll state the obvious here, but like if you have crummy or garbage data, then you're not going to get a whole lot of value out of those things. And so, I'm curious for the group here, uh, is that maybe the thing that people need to start with even before they move on to a lot of these AI use cases, at least if the problems they're looking to solve do involve data, maybe the first thing you need to do is make sure you get your data right. And that probably maybe doesn't necessarily involve AI, or maybe it does to identify where you have the crappiest data. I don't know. But how do we feel about that, right? The inputs, right? The data that's you're putting into these things obviously is going to influence the value that you get from them.
Yeah, I imagine you're going to see a little bit of 2024 being like the rise of validation rules again to move things from different stages in your CRM, right? Like, I think there is going to be something there. We've run into a couple of tools that are trying to tell you, hey, this, assess your overall tech stack and where are you missing data most frequently, and kind of like there are a couple of companies trying to solve that problem in particular. Matt, for sure. I think on the one of the pieces we haven't really mentioned on the AI application side is just the power of AI in terms of categorization, like text-based categorization. So we underwent a big project in terms of just revamping our loss and churn reasons as like a really world practical example in which you take all the emails and all of the notes from a rep on all of your ops and load it into OpenAI and have it tell you, hey, like what are the 3 or 4 biggest reasons we lost these opportunities? So like I love the data side of the house in terms of like insights in terms of go to market, or your new business ARR is dropping because your ASP from this stage to this stage, like some of that stuff is great numerically. I would also add the power of AI from a categorization engine perspective in terms of taking all this unstructured text data and spitting out like, hey, these are your biggest loss reasons, these are your biggest churn reasons, and here's some examples tying into it. That's been very helpful for us as a business for sure.
Yeah, to plus one that, Matt, I don't think it's a dependency that you have to have this like extremely clean database in order to start leveraging AI. That being said, we're doing more and more data cleanliness projects than we ever have before. We used to pitch these, big dedupe projects or normalization projects, and they'd get deprioritized. That's not happening as much. I think it's much easier to make the case for it than ever before. But Ryan's example is perfect, right? Like I can just go load all my gong calls. I don't need to normalize that data. I don't need to clean it. As long as I've got, well, honestly, if I have a clean account database, that'd be ideal. But you can focus on some of the core areas that you need. And then the rest of it, these tools are getting much smarter. You don't have to like nail every industry normalization for it to come up with great insights.
Yeah. So hearing one, again, data doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to be good enough. 2, even if you have imperfect data or barely stuff that's good enough, I think to Ryan's point, you can use AI to help normalize some of that data, actually get it right. Like you said, classifying data points into X number of categories. You could also look at, right, like, hey, where might we have poor data quality, and use AI to help you identify those properties, those fields. So lots of things you can do on the input side. And then, I think leverage it to, like Jeff said, understand the trade-offs that will exist, but chances are the value for a lot of these things is going to outweigh the investment. And use it as your co-pilot, your hardest working intern, if you will, and let it help you kind of do your job better. All right, and the last thing, so in the last couple of minutes that we have here, I think a lot of the conversation, right, we've talked about technology, how that can help revenue operators be more efficient, more effective. We've talked about a lot about kind of the shift to focus on post sales, whether it's metrics, KPIs, automation, things that we can do to help influence revenue retention, renewal rates, expansion opportunities, all of that good stuff. None of that, like, people haven't stopped buying though, meaning like, like new customers still exists. People, like, things haven't gone completely to zero. And so, the question is like, well, what is effective in terms of, acquiring new logos, new customers, generating new business? And especially on outbound, it kind of plays into the AI conversation we've had before. Like one of the, naturally the first places that a lot of people started using AI was content and copy generation, of which obviously like outbound is big. And then there's all these questions. I mean, I feel like this is just a cycle, is like keeps coming up, like, is outbound dead? Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Right? We always go back and forth. And yeah, I think my personal opinion, we all know bad outbound when it winds up in our inboxes or LinkedIn inboxes. I also have countless examples of ways that outbound, my own outbound, has been incredibly successful for me. So I know that it works, and I know very well when it doesn't work. So I guess I'm curious for you all, what are your thoughts on the whole notion of, kind of, one, is outbound dead, or how can you make it effective? How can you make it work for you today? And bonus points if you throw in how you can use or not use AI to do that better. Rosalind, let's actually start with you on this one.
Yeah, sure. So I definitely think, leveraging AI to get the relevant data to reach out to a target persona at an ICP account makes sense. But please don't use AI to generate a generic template and send it to me telling me my name and my title and the company I work for. I think those are the worst outbound messages, because as soon as you get it, right, that it's cold calling, it's a cold outreach, it's going to be a template, it's not personalized, and it's unlikely that it's really relevant to you. So I definitely don't think that outbound is dead, but I think it, continues to become more and more challenging, and the ability for you to really kind of, like you have here, cutting through the noise is becoming more and more difficult, right? So there's no more of this kind of spray and pray. There's no more of these, just sending out email blasts, but really being very, very, very targeted in who you're reaching out to and why you're reaching out to them, and what value that you can bring to them is really important. Because I read all of my messages that I get. It may take me 3 months, but I get through all of the emails that I get in my inbox, in all of my different emails, as well as in my LinkedIn. And I can tell you that you can spot a cold email right away, right? You see in your preview, in your email, you see the first couple lines, you already know that this is probably not relevant. And I know a lot of people just kind of send that directly to spam, or they kind of delete it right away, mass delete, kind of just clicking the boxes if you use Gmail. I actually don't do that. I like to read through the emails because, one, it gives me a good sense of what not to do, but also occasionally I do get really good emails also. And I think it's important that we look for those too.
Yep. Agreed. Jeff, I think you were going to add something.
I would say outbound is never dead. Good outbound is hard to keep alive, maybe the better way of saying it. And there are a lot of new strategies and tactics that companies adopt, and they'll share their best practices, but by the time you see them, they've probably been implementing it for a few months. So you're a laggard if you're seeing like good tips and you're trying to forward it internally on LinkedIn. And so what I think makes sense is, start with a good ground game. How would you want to be sold to? How would your attention be gathered? And quite frankly, even if you have good outbound, you might just have bad timing, right? I'm just not in the market. I'm aware of you. I'm aware. I can tell you right now, I'm probably not going to buy. It could be a few months from now, but maybe you catch lightning and I change my mind. Maybe you're the lucky SDR or AE. That does change my mind. But I can tell you that outbound is very difficult. Email, calls, the noise. But I think the stated tried and true messaging, do your research, make your personalization truly personalized, right? And my name and my last name and my title doesn't count. So yeah, I'd say good outbound is really hard to keep alive.
Yeah.
I particularly liked Rosalind's note about like putting the problem you're trying to solve for the value up front. I would rather have a completely non-targeted, like non-personalized outbound that was like, hi human, and like this is a problem that you're solving. Like this is the exact problem, and then I can decide if that's a problem for me or not. Then the hi Ryan, I noticed that as a VP of RevOps at Quota Path, you X, Y, and Z. Like I know that you've used AI to dictate that, and you're wasting time telling me. I think Ross was joking. You're telling me my own name, my own title. But I would rather you just get to, it takes you too long to calculate and pay commissions. What would you do if you could do that in 15 minutes versus 4 hours? And then it's like, okay, like, is that a big problem for me? Yes or no? And I can decide whether or not I'm going to engage with it. Or, like you might find yourself wanting to run new projects within your organization, but not have enough capacity. Like what would your team do if you could bring on like outsourced, development capacity or something like that? Like be very clear about the problem and what you're trying to solve. That's the thing that I care the most about. And I reply to outbound. Like I enjoy it as a ops leader, especially when it's done well, and especially if it's short and sweet and just solving a clear problem that I have in the moment. I've bought software off of outbound before, absolutely. So I wouldn't say it's dead. I like Jeff's point of good is hard to keep alive. I think I agree with that 100%.
And I know we're out of time, so I'll just say like A/B test. I think that's the thing that like most companies are dropping the ball on. We have all these like amazing sequencing tools and we're sending all these emails and then nobody ever looks back at it and tries to figure out what worked and what didn't. So just invest in that so that you know what's actually converting.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, yeah, don't take it for granted. Crunch the numbers, do the math, figure out what works. And I agree. I think I can't remember who said it, but yeah, like the things that would work on you, right? If you're the one doing outbound, like try to do those things in your own process, right? Like I also will always tell someone when they send me a good outbound email. It's happened twice in, call it, recent history. One was a rep from Gong who saw one of my LinkedIn posts about the Green Bay Packers, sent me something about like the Lambeau Field experience, and then the other was a rep from ClickUp who saw a LinkedIn post about kind of my love for a good corny dad joke, if you will, and brought up, like, had an awesome subject line that tied all that stuff together. All these people did was they went to my LinkedIn account. They like saw some stuff that I posted about. I think all of us here post on LinkedIn basically every day, definitely every week, right? Like those are the things that you can do to add the human element. And so yeah, like it works. It's hard to keep alive and hard to do well, but it's not going anywhere. But with that, we're at top of the hour right now. So we have covered a lot of ground, from KPIs, metrics, AI, compensation, commission management, and outbound. So again, all of these folks, everybody are in the RevOps Co-op Slack group if you want to continue the conversation there at all. I think all of them will probably be at our conference as well, speaking or attending in some capacity. So if you want to fist bump elbows, like we can high five now since we're past COVID, do all that stuff. Maybe even give hugs, totally up to you. Definitely attend that at the end of May. And then last but not least, this is recorded and write-up will go up on our website in a week or two. So with that, I'll let you all run. Ryan, Jen, Jeff, Rosalind, thank you all for dropping some knowledge, and to all the attendees out there, thank you very much for attending as well. But I'll see you on the flip side. So take care, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you.